The moment Fiona realized the man she had just humiliated in front of half of Toronto's financial district was about to become her new boss, she considered faking her own death. It had started, as most disasters in her life did, because of her sister. Fiona had not planned to be at the Meridian Hotel that Thursday evening. She had planned to be in her apartment in Liberty Village, eating leftover butter chicken and watching the kind of documentary that her colleagues would consider boring. She was 31 years old, she had a mortgage and a cat named Bernard, and that was more than enough excitement for one person. But then Kezia had called, voice already slurring at 7 in the evening, and said something that made Fiona's stomach drop. There's a man and he won't leave me alone and I don't know where Bridget went and That was all Fiona needed to hear. She threw on her coat, grabbed her keys, and took the 504 streetcar downtown because parking near the Meridian was impossible on a weekday, and she knew from experience that panic did not improve her parallel parking. The whole ride over, she told herself, it was probably nothing. Kezia was 26 and dramatic and had once called Fiona in tears over a broken blender. This was probably nothing. It was not nothing. When Fiona pushed through the doors of the hotel bar, she found her sister seated in a velvet chair near the back, eyes glassy, with a man crouched beside her, who had his hand resting on her knee in a way that had nothing friendly about it. Kezia was smiling the unfocused smile of someone who had lost track of the evening, and the man was leaning in close, saying something low and private. Fiona did not stop to think. She crossed the room in 8 steps, grabbed the half-full glass of sparkling water sitting on the table beside them, and poured it directly over the man's head. The bar went quiet. The man shot to his feet, gasping, water dripping from his dark hair and down the collar of what was almost certainly a very expensive suit. He turned to look at her with an expression that moved quickly through shock, confusion, and something that landed somewhere between disbelief and reluctant amusement. "What are you doing?" he said. "Getting your attention," Fiona said. She already had Kezia by the arm, pulling her upright. "She is not interested. Whatever you think was happening here, it wasn't. I was making sure she was all right. I'm sure you were." She did not look at him again. She steered Kezia toward the exit, collected her coat from the hook near the door, and walked out into the cold November air without a backward glance. Behind her, she heard someone at the bar say something, and then a low laugh. She did not know if it was him. She told herself she did not care. In the cab home, Kezia fell asleep against her shoulder, and Fiona stared out the window at the city lights blurring past and thought, that's done. She would never see that man again. Toronto was big enough that she never had to. She was wrong, of course. She just didn't know it yet. Fiona worked at Callaway & Reed, a mid-sized investment firm on Bay Street that specialized in wealth management for high-net-worth clients. She had been there for 6 years, had worked her way from junior analyst to senior portfolio manager, and took a quiet pride in the fact that she had done it without asking anyone for a single favor. She was good at her job. She liked numbers because numbers did not have moods and did not change their minds without warning. She liked the order of spreadsheets and the clean logic of a well-constructed financial model. She was, by her own admission, not the most exciting person in the office. But she was reliable, and in finance, reliable was worth something. She arrived on Friday morning with a coffee from the place on King Street and the mild headache of someone who had stayed up too late worrying about her sister. She settled at her desk, opened her laptop, and had just started reviewing the quarterly reports when her colleague Bridget appeared at the edge of her cubicle. Bridget was the kind of person who always knew things before anyone else. She was also the person who had apparently abandoned Kezia at the Meridian Hotel bar the night before, a fact Fiona was saving for a separate conversation. "Did you hear?" Bridget said. "Hear what?" "About the new managing director. Hendricks is out, effective immediately, and they've brought in someone external. Big hire, apparently. Comes from a firm in Vancouver, worked in London before that." She lowered her voice with the specific energies of someone who has been waiting all morning to deliver news. "He's walking the floor this morning. Like right now." Fiona turned back to her screen. "I have 3 reports to finish before noon. I'm just saying, it's a big deal. It's always a big deal, and then it isn't." She took a sip of her coffee. "Close the door on your way out, please." Bridget did not close the door, but she did leave, which was close enough. The floor announcement came at 10:30. All department heads and senior staff were asked to gather in the main boardroom to meet the incoming managing director. Fiona saved her work, straightened her blazer, and joined the small procession of colleagues, making their way down the hall with the low collective energy of people who had been to enough of these meetings to know they would be standing around for 20 minutes before anything actually happened. She walked into the boardroom. She found a spot near the windows. She looked up when the door opened. The man who walked in was tall, wearing a charcoal suit with a white shirt open at the collar, his dark hair still slightly damp from what might have been a morning shower or might have been Her mind went there before she could stop it. A glass of sparkling water poured over his head in a hotel bar the previous evening. He looked around the room with the composed expression of someone entirely comfortable walking into spaces full of strangers. And then his eyes found hers. He stopped, just for a moment. A brief, almost imperceptible pause. Then the corner of his mouth moved and he looked away. Fiona turned to face the window and stared at the CN Tower in the middle distance and thought very carefully about her options. She could resign. She could transfer to the Calgary office. She could simply pretend, very convincingly, that she had never been in a hotel bar in her life. "This is Adrian Holt," the department head was saying. "He'll be taking over as managing director effective Monday. We're very pleased to have him join the team." There was polite applause. Fiona clapped, because not clapping would have been worse than clapping. Adrian Holt thanked the room in a voice that was calm and unhurried. He said he looked forward to working with everyone. He said he had reviewed the team's recent performance and was genuinely impressed. He said all the correct things in all the correct order, and at no point did he look in Fiona's direction again. She told herself this was a relief. She went back to her desk and finished her reports and did not think about it. Her mother called that evening, as her mother did every Friday, and Fiona answered on the second ring because ignoring it would only result in a callback and then a concerned text and then a voicemail that began with, "Fiona, it's Mom. I don't know if you got my message." "How's my girl?" her mom said. "Fine. Good. Work was fine. And Kezia? She called me last night. She sounded a little. She's okay, went out. Had too much to drink. I picked her up. It's handled." There was a pause on the other end that Fiona recognized as her mother deciding whether to say the next thing or not. She said the next thing. "You know, you don't always have to be the one who handles everything. Someone has to. You're 31, sweetheart. You should be out, having fun, meeting someone." "Mom, I'm just saying. When's the last time you went on a date?" Fiona looked at Bernard, who was sitting on her coffee table cleaning his ear with a dedication that suggested he was also not listening to this conversation. "I'm very busy," she said. "Busy isn't a personality. It is for me. I have to go. I have reports to review." "On a Friday evening? Good night, Mom." She hung up and sat with the phone in her lap for a moment. She was not opposed to meeting someone. She was simply realistic about the fact that her track record with men was not impressive. Her last relationship had ended 18 months ago when she discovered that her boyfriend of 2 years had been lying to her about where he was going every second Tuesday. He had not been having an affair. He had been taking pottery classes and had been too embarrassed to tell her, which she might have found endearing if he had not also, in the process of hiding the pottery classes, told so many small lies that she no longer trusted a single thing he said. She had ended it. She did not regret ending it. She did, occasionally, regret the Tuesday evening she had spent alone wondering. She was not, as she had informed her mother on multiple occasions, waiting to be rescued. She was simply not in a hurry. The following Monday, Adrian Holt sent a meeting request to every senior portfolio manager on the floor. Individual 15-minute check-ins, back-to-back, starting at 9. Fiona's slot was at 11:45. She spent the morning pretending she was not thinking about it and doing an unconvincing job. At 11:43, she stood outside his office door. She knocked. "Come in." She opened the door and walked in and sat down across from him and put her portfolio on the desk and did not look at his face for the first 2 seconds. When she did look up, he was watching her with an expression she could not immediately read. "Fiona Mercer," he said. "Senior portfolio manager, 6 years with the firm. Consistently top 3 performer in the department." He glanced at the folder in front of him and then back at her. "I've been looking forward to this one." She kept her face neutral. "I hope the reports were useful." "They were. You have a very clean methodology." He paused. "We've met before, haven't we?" It was not a question. Fiona considered several responses. She selected the honest one because lying in a professional context had always struck her as an investment with terrible returns. "At the Meridian Hotel," she said, "last Thursday. I owe you an apology for the water. I misread the situation." Then he said, "My cousin had too much to drink at a work event and I was trying to get her into a cab. She kept insisting she was fine." Fiona closed her eyes briefly. "Your cousin, that's..." She stopped. "I'm sorry. I genuinely thought..." "I know what you thought." There was nothing hostile in his voice. If anything, he sounded like someone making a significant effort not to find the situation funny. "You were protecting someone. I understand that." He picked up his pen. "Now, walk me through your Q3 client retention numbers." She walked him through the numbers. It was the most normal 15 minutes she had spent all week, which said something about the week. After the meeting, walking back to her desk, Bridget materialized from around a corner in a way that suggested she had been waiting. "How was it?" "Fine," Fiona said. "He's single, you know, Bridget. Just noting it. Please stop noting things." Over the weeks that followed, Fiona threw herself into work with the kind of focus that she privately admitted had less to do with ambition and more to do with having something to concentrate on. That wasn't the fact that Adrian Holt had a habit of stopping by the design side of the floor to check in, and that whenever he did, he tended to stop at her desk last. He never stayed long. He asked about her files, reviewed her recommendations, occasionally pushed back on her projections in a way that was pointed and intelligent, and actually improved the final product. She started to look forward to those conversations in a way she did not examine too closely. She also started to notice small things, that he remembered everything, that he was patient with the junior staff in a way that people at his level often were not, that he ate lunch alone at his desk most days, because he was genuinely that busy, not because he was the kind of person who performed busyness for the room. Kezia came to meet her for dinner one evening in late November and noticed something immediately, because Kezia had always been irritatingly perceptive about everything except her own choices. "You like someone," she said over pasta on College Street. "I don't. You have that look. I don't have a look. You do. It's the look where you're trying not to smile while talking about something." Kezia pointed her fork. "Who is it?" Fiona moved her food around her plate. "He's my managing director." Kezia put down her fork. "Fiona, I know. He's your boss." "I know that, Kezia. Is he the water guy?" Fiona said nothing, which was an answer. Kezia picked up her fork again, wearing the expression of someone who had just received genuinely interesting information. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Tell me everything." Fiona told her a carefully edited version of everything, which still took 45 minutes because Kezia asked a lot of follow-up questions. On the streetcar home, staring out at the dark storefronts of Roncesvalles, Fiona told herself firmly that nothing was going to come of it. He was her managing director. She valued her career too much to complicate it with feelings she had no business developing. She would be professional and focused, and that would be the end of it. She managed this resolution for exactly 11 more days. It ended at the firm's annual client appreciation event, held at a private venue in Yorkville that had the specific atmosphere of somewhere designed to impress people who were already impressed with themselves. Fiona was there in a professional capacity, helping manage client relationships, wearing the black dress she wore to every work event, because it was elegant and unambiguous and required no decisions. Late in the evening, when most of the clients had moved toward the open bar and the canapes were running low, she stepped out onto the terrace for air. The December night was cold enough that she could see her breath, but quiet in the way that city nights rarely were. Adrian found her there 10 minutes later. He stood beside her at the railing without saying anything for a moment, looking out at the lights of the city below. He had, she noticed, loosened his tie slightly and was holding a glass of water, not wine. "You don't drink," she said. "Not at work events." He glanced sideways at her. "You either, I've noticed. I like to know what's happening around me." "Me too." He was quiet for another moment. "You did good work tonight. The McAllister account specifically. He's difficult, and you handled him well. Thank you." She looked at her hands on the railing. "You didn't come out here to tell me that." "No," he agreed. A long pause, Fiona. His voice was level, unhurried, like everything else about him. "I want to be straightforward with you, because I think you appreciate that. I do. I'm aware of the position I'm in. You report to me, and I take that seriously. I'm not going to do anything that makes you uncomfortable or puts you in a difficult spot." He turned to face her. "But I also think that pretending I haven't noticed anything for the last 6 weeks would be dishonest, and I don't like being dishonest." Fiona looked at him for a long moment. The city hummed below them. Somewhere on the street, someone laughed. "What have you noticed?" she said. He looked at her with the same calm, direct expression he brought to quarterly reviews and contract negotiations. "That you're the most competent person on my floor. That you argue back when you think I'm wrong, which I respect enormously. That you had a terrible poker face in your office the morning after the Meridian." She exhaled. "I thought I handled that very professionally." "You were visibly relieved that I wasn't going to bring it up. That is." She stopped. "That's fair." Something shifted in his expression. "I'm not asking you for anything tonight. I just wanted to be honest. We can leave it here and go back inside and nothing changes." She thought about her resolution on the streetcar. She thought about 18 months of evenings alone, and the very reasonable argument she had been making to herself about professional boundaries. She thought about the fact that she was 31 and tired of being only sensible. "Or?" she said. He smiled then for the first time, properly, and it changed the whole shape of his face. "Or," he said, "you let me take you to dinner. Not as a work thing, just dinner." She looked back out at the city. Then she said, "There's a restaurant on Queen West that I've been trying to get a reservation at for 4 months." He pulled out his phone. "What's it called?" she told him. He made a call right there on the terrace, said 4 words to someone on the other end, and ended it. "Saturday at 7, he said. She stared at him. "That's not, you can't just." My college roommate owns it, he said, and had the decency to look slightly sheepish about it. She laughed before she could stop herself. It surprised her, the ease of it, how quickly it came. She couldn't remember the last time she had laughed like that standing next to someone. They went back inside, separately, 3 minutes apart, and said nothing about it to anyone. But on the elevator going down at the end of the evening, they were the only two people in it, and when the doors closed, he looked at her and she looked at him and neither of them said a word. And that was, in its own way, its own kind of conversation. Dinner on Saturday was the kind of evening that reorganizes itself in your memory afterwards, taking up more space than it has any right to. They talked for 3 hours. She told him about growing up in Hamilton, about choosing finance because she liked certainty, about Kezia, about Bernard the cat. He told her about Vancouver, about the firm in London, about a sister named Lydia who called him every Sunday and asked the same 4 questions in the same order every time. He was funny in a quiet way, the kind of funny that didn't announce itself. She found herself wanting to know more things about him, which was a feeling she had not had about someone in a very long time. Walking back along Queen West afterward, he reached over and took her hand without making a thing of it. She let him. They dated quietly through December and into January, careful at work, careful in public, navigating it with the same methodical attention they both brought to everything they did. It was not always easy. There were mornings she arrived at the office and had to consciously shift gears, had to become Fiona Mercer, senior portfolio manager, and set aside the other version of herself that existed only in the evenings and weekends. Adrian was better at compartmentalizing than she was, which she found both admirable and faintly annoying. What she did not know, through all of those weeks, was that someone else was paying close attention to what was happening between them. Bridget had been at Callaway and Reed for 8 years. She was smart and fast and had fully expected to be promoted to senior portfolio manager before Fiona was. She had not been. She had smiled and congratulated Fiona, and had been, for all visible purposes, perfectly fine about it. Fiona had never questioned this. She had assumed the friendship was real, because she had never done anything to make it otherwise. She learned slowly that this had been a significant miscalculation. It started with small things she didn't connect. A client complaint that seemed to come from nowhere, about a recommendation Fiona had made that she was almost certain she had documented carefully. A missed email that she had no memory of not sending. A rumor, circulating quietly through the floor, that she had developed a personal relationship with the managing director and was using it to influence file assignments. She heard about the rumor from a junior analyst named Theo, who told her in the elevator with the well-meaning awkwardness of someone who thought she should know. She thanked him and went straight to the bathroom and stood at the sink for a moment with the cold water running. She thought about who might have said it. She thought about who had the access, the motive, and the particular kind of persistent low-level resentment that could curdle into something like this over years. She did not want to believe it. Bridget had been one of the first people to welcome her when she joined the firm. They had gotten lunch together for 6 years. She had helped Fiona move apartments. She had been there, or claimed to have been there, the night Fiona poured water on Adrian in the hotel bar. She stopped. Bridget had been at the Meridian that night. She was the one who had left Kezia alone, and she had been conveniently unreachable until the following morning. Fiona went back to her desk and opened her email and started looking. It took her 3 days to find what she was looking for. Bridget had been careful, but not careful enough. There were forwarded emails to an external address, slightly altered in ways designed to look like Fiona's error. There were messages to 2 of Fiona's clients that had been sent from a spoofed version of her email address, containing advice that subtly contradicted Fiona's actual documented recommendations. One of the clients had escalated a concern that Fiona had never understood because the advice in the email was nothing she had ever given. She printed everything. She organized it in a folder. She made a copy and stored it on a personal drive. And then she called her mother, because sometimes you need to call your mother before you do the hard thing. You have to report it, her mom said, immediately, before Fiona had even finished explaining. I know. Don't let it sit, sweetheart. The longer it sits. I know, Mom. I know. Do you want your father to come down? He could. I don't need Dad to come down. I'm 31. You're my 31-year-old. I'm going to handle it, she exhaled. I just needed to hear your voice first. There was a pause. I love you, her mom said. I love you too. She hung up and then sat for a long moment in the quiet of her apartment with Bernard in her lap, running her thumb along the folder's edge, and felt very clearly the difference between knowing something is right and wanting to do it anyway. She told Adrian first. She had to, because the complaint had involved him by implication, and because she was not willing to hide things from him. She sat across from him in his office, with the door closed, and laid out what she had found, piece by piece, in the same methodical way she would have walked through a financial analysis. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. "How long do you think it's been going on?" "At least a year. Possibly longer." He picked up his phone and called HR and legal simultaneously. He was calm in a way she had come to recognize as something other than coldness. It was the calm of someone who knew exactly what to do next and was already doing it. Before the call connected, he looked at her. "You okay?" "No," she said honestly, "but I will be." The investigation moved quickly. The evidence Fiona had compiled was clean and well organized, which several people in HR commented on with an admiration that would have been funny under different circumstances. Bridget was placed on administrative leave within 48 hours. The full scope of what she had done, the fabricated emails, the redirected client correspondence, a formal complaint she had drafted but not yet filed that contained outright fabrications about Fiona's conduct, came together in a picture that was difficult to look at directly. What emerged through the process was that Bridget had been quietly building a case against Fiona for over a year. The promotion she had expected had gone to Fiona. The mentor relationship she had developed with the previous managing director, Hendricks, had ended when he was let go. She had convinced herself that Fiona had taken things from her, first the promotion, and then, when Adrian arrived, a version of the future she had constructed in her own mind. She had started with small distortions and kept going, because small distortions are easy to rationalize and harder to stop once you start. Fiona sat through the final HR meeting and listened to the summary and felt something complicated move through her that was not quite satisfaction and not quite grief. She and Bridget had eaten lunch together every week for 6 years. She had told Bridget things she had not told other people. She thought about the move, about the lunches, about all the mornings she had arrived at work and seen a friendly face, and not understood that the friendliness was, at some level, constructed. She thought about the night at the Meridian, Kezia left alone, and understood that for the first time. She went home that evening and sat on her couch and did not turn on a documentary or review any files or return any messages. She just sat. Bernard climbed into her lap after a while and she put her hand on his back and felt the steady rise and fall of him breathing. Kezia showed up an hour later with takeout from the Thai place on Ossington and did not ask questions, just handed Fiona a container of Pad CU and sat beside her on the couch, and that was exactly the right thing. At work, quietly and then less quietly, the picture of Fiona's actual performance record re-emerged in full. The client who had escalated the concern retracted it once the email records were corrected. 2 of the senior partners sent her notes that were brief and professional, and said, essentially, that they were sorry this had happened, and that her work spoke for itself, which was about as effusive as senior partners ever got. Adrian said nothing at work that was different from what he had always said. He was professional and precise and treated her exactly as he had before, which she understood was a form of respect. What he said outside of work was different. He showed up at her door on a Thursday evening with 2 cups of coffee from the King Street place, which he had remembered was her favorite, without her ever having told him explicitly. And she stood in her doorway for a moment and felt something in her chest she did not have a clean word for. "You didn't have to," she said. "I know." He handed her the cup. "How are you?" She thought about it honestly. "Better than I was. Not all the way yet." "That's reasonable." He looked at her. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. Bernard appeared immediately and regarded Adrian with the specific suspicion he reserved for newcomers before deciding, after 30 seconds, that he was acceptable and walking away. "High praise," Adrian said. "He ignored my ex-boyfriend for 8 months, Fiona said. "You're already ahead." He laughed, low and quiet, and sat on her couch, and she sat beside him, and they drank their coffee and talked for 2 hours about nothing important, and she thought, this is the thing. Not the dinners in nice restaurants, not the terrace in Yorkville. This easiness. This being in the same room without needing it to be anything other than what it was. Spring arrived the way it always did in Toronto, tentatively, testing, taking its time. By April, the trees on her street were doing something hopeful. She had started eating lunch outside again, on the days when it was warm enough, which Adrian had started doing too, and which no one at work commented on because they were both careful, and because most people had more pressing things to think about. Her mom asked for the 4th time when she was going to bring someone home for Easter dinner. Fiona for the first time said, "Maybe soon." Her mother made a sound that was not quite a shriek but was in the general family of shrieks. She was not ready to make promises she couldn't keep. She was not, in her nature, a person who moved fast or said things she wasn't certain of. But she was also not the same person she had been in November, the one who had been so committed to her own reliability that she had stopped leaving room for things to surprise her. She thought about what she had learned in the past several months, about what it cost to hold something back because you were afraid of getting the math wrong, about the difference between being careful and being closed. She thought about a man standing at a railing in December saying, "I just wanted to be honest." She thought that this was the quality she valued most in anyone, the willingness to say a true thing out loud even when it was inconvenient. She had spent years building walls out of competence, reassuring herself that being good at her work was enough, that she did not need the other things. She had not been wrong, exactly. But she had not been entirely right either. There were Sunday mornings now when she made coffee for two and sat in her kitchen across from someone who read the same sections of the paper she did and argued with her about analysis and remembered how she took her coffee without being asked. There was the particular sound of her sister calling at inconvenient times and the particular comfort of knowing her mother would pick up on the first ring. There was Bernard asleep on the windowsill in the thin April sun, one paw hanging off the edge. There was a life that looked from the outside almost exactly the same as it had before. But from the inside it had a different weight to it, less armor, more room. She finished her coffee and looked at the street outside her window, at the trees doing their tentative thing in the April light, and thought that she had poured a glass of sparkling water over a man's head in a hotel bar, and somehow ended up here, which was not the most logical sequence of events she had ever been part of, but was perhaps the best.